If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps us bring you even more incredible real-life stories that leave you thinking long after the video ends. Now let's dive into today's story. At a family meeting surrounded by relatives who thought they knew me, my mother smiled and bragged about my sister's perfect new house. Then she turned to me and asked loud enough for everyone to hear. When I would finally achieve something like that, the room went still. I felt every old comparison press down on my C*******T, but I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I just smiled. What I said next didn't raise my voice, but it flipped the entire table upside down. Before I get into how that moment unfolded, share where you're listening from and tell me if family underestimated you too. I'm Emma, I'm 30, and if you met me at a coffee shop or passed me on the sidewalk, you probably wouldn't guess I was the family disappointment. I dress neatly without trying too hard. I keep my hair simple. I move through rooms quietly the way you do when you've learned not to take up too much space. I work in tech, the kind of role where people trust you with responsibility but don't clap for you when you do it. Well, I've always been fine with that at work. Results speak at home, they never did. My family looks perfect from the outside holiday photos frame, just right, matching smiles. My mom Linda loves that image more than anything. She believes, if everyone thinks we're close, then we must be. My dad, Edward, supports that belief by staying silent. He nods, clears his throat, changes the subject. He's not cruel. He's just absent in the moments that matter. Then there's my sister Sophia. She's 3 years older, confident, polished, and always one step ahead in my parents' eyes. When she walks into a room, my mom straightens up. When Sophia talks, my dad listens. When she succeeds, it becomes a family story, retold again and again until it sounds bigger than it already was. I don't think Sophia ever asked to be the favorite. She just grew used to it, so did they. Growing up, the imbalance showed up in quiet ways: who sat closest to mom at dinner, whose opinion ended the argument, whose mistakes were called learning experiences and whose were called patterns. I learned early that keeping the peace meant keeping quiet, so I did. I focused on school, then work, then building a life that didn't depend on anyone's approval. By the time I hit my 29s, I wasn't asking my parents for anything, not help, not praise, not even attention. I told myself I was past needing it, but some habits die hard. A part of me still noticed when my phone stayed silent, still hoped that maybe this time they'd show up without being reminded. That's the part of me my mother never saw, or maybe she saw it and chose to ignore it. Either way, it's the reason her words at that family meeting didn't come out of nowhere. They landed on years of quiet comparisons, swallowed feelings, and a role I never agreed to play. And that role was about to crack. I didn't plan anything dramatic for my birthday that year. No big venue, no speeches, just a dinner at my place and a few people who actually knew me. I sent the invitations early, weeks ahead, because I'd learned that if I didn't, my family would claim they were too busy. I even followed up once, casual and light, pretending I wasn't already bracing myself. At first there was nothing, no yes, no no, just silence, the kind that feels louder the longer it sits there. My friends responded within hours. Sarah asked what dessert she should bring. Mike joked about being in charge of music. Jenny offered to help me set up their messages. Filled my phone in a way that made the quiet from my parents stand out even more. 3 days before my birthday, my mom finally called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't say she was excited. She went straight to the point: they couldn't make it. Something had come up for Sophia, a work-related celebration. Apparently it was important enough that my birthday could wait again. I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at the counter while she talked, nodding. Even though she couldn't see me, I said. I understood, because that's what I always said. After we hung up, I sat down on the floor and laughed once, short and sharp, like my body didn't know what else to do with the disappointment that night. I celebrated anyway, not out of spite, out of survival. We ate takeout, drank cheap wine, and talked until it got late. My friends asked why my parents weren't there. I shrugged and changed the subject. It wasn't a lie. It was avoidance. I'd spent years perfecting it. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a short text from my mom. Happy birthday, no call, no explanation. Just those 3 words, like checking off a task she'd almost forgotten. Sophia didn't message at all. That was the moment something shifted. Not loudly, not all at once. Just a quiet decision settling in my C*******T. I stopped correcting the story my parents told about me. When relatives asked why they hadn't seen me around, I smiled and said I'd been busy. When my mom hinted that I should get my life together, I let it pass. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was conserving energy. A few months later, my mom invited me to a big family get-together. Everyone would be there, she said. It would be nice, she said. I agreed without hesitation, not because I was hopeful, but because I was ready. I didn't know exactly what would happen that night. I just knew I wouldn't shrink to make anyone else comfortable ever again. In the weeks between my birthday and that family gathering, my life grew quieter in a way that felt deliberate. I stopped waiting for my phone to buzz. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head, imagining better versions of things I'd already lived through. I poured that energy into my home. Instead, I painted a wall I'd been putting off. I rearranged furniture until the space finally felt like mine. At night, I sat by the window with a mug of tea, watching the city lights blink on one by one, reminding myself that my world was bigger than my parents' approval. The silence from my family didn't mean they'd stop talking. I found that out by accident. A cousin mentioned almost casually that my mom had said I was still figuring things out and not quite settled yet. It wasn't said with concern. It was said like a justification, like an explanation for my absence. I thanked him for the update and let the conversation drift. But the words stayed with me long after. That was when the collapse really happened, not the kind where you cry on the floor or scream into a pillow, the kind where something inside you finally gives up. Trying to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you, I realized I'd been carrying my family's version of me like a weight, adjusting my posture so it wouldn't slip off and embarrass them. I was done with that. I didn't plot revenge. I didn't gather evidence or prepare speeches. I did something simpler and harder. I decided not to lie anymore, not to smooth things over, not to help maintain an image that erased me. If the truth came out, it would come out calmly without theatrics, and if it made people uncomfortable, that discomfort wouldn't be mine to manage. When my mom called again to confirm the family gathering, I listened to her voice carefully. She sounded upbeat, almost rehearsed. She mentioned who would be there, who was excited to see me. She didn't ask how I'd been. She didn't mention my birthday. I told her I'd be there. I didn't say anything else. The night before the gathering, I stood in my bedroom deciding what to wear, not to impress anyone, not to prove anything. I chose something simple and elegant, the kind of outfit that lets you blend in until you decide not to. I went to bed early. I slept better than I expected. I didn't know what my mother planned to say. The next day, I didn't know how Sophia would act with an audience. What I did know was this. I wasn't walking into that room as the version of me they were used to. I was walking in as myself, with nothing to hide and nothing to ask for. And whatever happened next would be built on that truth. The house was already loud when I arrived, not the warm kind of loud, but the restless kind where people talk over each other because they're performing more than connecting. I paused just inside the doorway, letting the noise wash over me. Laughter bounced off the walls, glasses clanked, someone called my name surprised. I'd actually shown up. The dining room table had been extended to fit everyone. My mom had gone all out the way she always did. When an audience was involved, matching place settings. Candles that smelled faintly of something floral, the kind of setup that said, "Look how close we are." I spotted Sophia immediately. She was standing near the center of the room, one hand resting on the back of a chair, telling a story with big gestures. People leaned in when she spoke. My dad hovered nearby, refilling drinks, nodding along. My mom saw me and smiled too quickly. "Emma, you made it," she said, already turning back to the group before I could answer. That smile wasn't for me. It was for the room. I took my seat near the end of the table, not by accident. That's where I always ended up. I didn't mind. From there, I could see everyone without being pulled into the middle of the noise. Plates were passed. Conversations overlapped. Questions came my way. The usual ones about work, about whether I was seeing anyone. I answered politely. Briefly, no one pressed. They rarely did. Halfway through dinner, my mom stood up and tapped her glass with a fork. The sound cut through the room, conversation slowed, then stopped. She waited until she had everyone's attention. Her posture straight, her expression proud. "I just want to take a moment," she said. Glancing at Sophia to celebrate something very special, she gestured toward my sister. "Sophia has finally found the perfect house." A ripple of applause followed. People smiled, nodded, murmured congratulations. Sophia ducked her head, pretending to be modest while soaking it all in. My dad raised his glass. My mom continued listing details. I didn't need to hear the neighborhood, the space, how proud she was. Then she looked at me, not casually, not kindly, deliberately, and Emma, she said, her voice light but sharp at the edges. When do you think you'll achieve something like that? The room went still. I felt it before I saw it. The collective pause. Forks stopped moving, someone coughed. A cousin shifted in their chair. Every face turned toward me, curiosity flickering behind polite expressions. This was the moment, the one she'd set up without warning, confident I'd either laugh it off or shrink. I didn't. I placed my fork down slowly. I took a sip of water. I could hear my own breathing, steady and calm, even as my heart thudded against my ribs for a second. I considered saying nothing, letting the silence speak for me. But I'd spent too many years letting silence do the work for everyone else. So I smiled, not a smug smile, not a forced one, just calm. I already have. I said. My mom blinked. What? I bought a house. I repeated evenly, I've been living there for months. The reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath from somewhere down the table. Someone whispered, "Wait, what?" My dad froze midship, his glass hovering near his mouth. Sophia's smile faltered, confusion flashing across her face before she masked it. My mom laughed, short and uncertain. "That's not funny," she said. "Why would you joke about that?" "I'm not joking," I said. I kept my tone gentle, almost conversational. "It's a 3-bedroom place. There's a small terrace and a garden. It's quiet. I like it." The room erupted, not with noise but with questions. When? How? Why didn't we know? My mom's face shifted through disbelief, then irritation, then something closer to panic. "If that's true," she said slowly, "why didn't you tell us?" I met her eyes. "You could have seen it," I said. "I celebrated my birthday there. I invited you." The words landed harder than I expected. A few people gasped. Someone at the far end of the table dropped their napkin. My mom opened her mouth, then closed it again. Color crept up her neck. "That's not fair," she said. "We had a conflict." I nodded. "You? Did you choose to go somewhere else?" The silence stretched. I could feel the weight of it pressing down on the table. My aunt looked between us, her brow furrowed. "Linda," she said carefully, "you didn't go to Emma's birthday." My mom waved a hand. "It was complicated." "It wasn't." I said. I wasn't angry. That was the strangest part. "You said it wasn't important enough to change your plans." My dad finally spoke. "Emma, this isn't the time." "When would be?" I asked softly. Sophia shifted in her seat. "You didn't have to say it like that," she said. "This was supposed to be a nice night." "I didn't ruin anything," I said. Turning to her, I answered a question. The room buzzed with quiet tension. People exchanged looks. Pieces were clicking into place the way they do when a story you've been told starts to unravel. My mom's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the tablecloth. "You're making us look bad," she hissed. I held her gaze. "I'm not making you look like anything. I'm just not hiding anymore." No one clapped. No one cheered. But something shifted. The power my mom had relied on, the assumption that everyone would accept her version of events, cracked right there at the table. I stood up, smoothing my dress. My movements unhurried. "I think I'm going to head out," I said. "Thank you for dinner." I didn't wait for permission. I didn't look back as I walked toward the door. Behind me, the room erupted into overlapping voices. Questions my parents couldn't answer fast enough. The night air outside felt cool against my skin. I took a deep breath as I reached my car, my hand steady on the door handle. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt clear. The fallout didn't explode all at once. It rippled outward, quiet but persistent. Over the next few days, my phone started lighting up with numbers I hadn't seen in years. A cousin asking if I was okay. An aunt apologizing for believing things she'd never bothered to confirm. One message after another, each one peeling back the version of me my parents had been selling. No one called to yell. No one demanded explanations. Most of them just said some version of "I didn't know." And for the first time, I believed them. My parents didn't reach out right away. When they finally did, it wasn't to ask how I was. It was to complain about how awkward the dinner had become, about how people were asking questions they didn't like, about how my sister's celebration had been overshadowed. I listened without interrupting, then said I wasn't going to explain myself again. I wasn't angry. I was finished. Sophia stopped posting about her house. After that, a few events she'd planned quietly fell apart when relatives made excuses not to come. I didn't take any pleasure in it. I just noticed the shift. What surprised me most was how peaceful things became. I started getting invited to gatherings directly, not as an afterthought. People asked about my work, my home, my life, and actually listened to the answers. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just present. Losing control of the story forced my parents to face something they'd avoided for years. And it gave me something I didn't know. I needed space to exist without being compared. Looking back, buying a house wasn't the real achievement. Learning to stop shrinking for people who only valued me in comparison was sometimes the most powerful thing you can do, is tell the truth calmly and walk away. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening and see you in the next videos.